Hello everyone, I'm James. Today, we're diving into a case that left even hardened investigators disturbed. A newlywed couple boards a luxury cruise ship expecting the journey of a lifetime. But just days into their dream honeymoon, the husband disappears without a trace, his blood found smeared across the ship's canopy. His wife, discovered the next morning, calmly enjoying a scheduled spa appointment. Was this a tragic accident, or something far more sinister lurking beneath the surface of paradise? Please support the channel by subscribing and staying active. It really helps me out a lot. I'd be incredibly grateful for that. Let's get started. George Allen Smith seemed destined for a life most people could only dream of. Born into privilege on October 3, 1978, in the affluent town of Glenville, Connecticut, he was the only son of George Smith Sr. and Maureen Smith. His parents owned Costco Liquors, a highly successful family-run liquor store that had become a local institution over nearly 4 decades. But George wasn't the typical spoiled rich kid. Despite growing up surrounded by wealth, he was grounded, hardworking, and deeply connected to his family. While his friends spent their summers on lavish vacations, George worked long hours stocking shelves and running the register at his family's store. By the time he graduated from Greenwich High School, George had a clear path laid before him. He attended the prestigious Babson College in Massachusetts, studying business and preparing to one day take over the family legacy. Yet even as he climbed the corporate ladder in Boston, working as a data mining analyst, something kept pulling him back home. And it wasn't long before home gave him another reason to stay. In 2002, at a casual gathering with friends, George met Jennifer Hagel, a beautiful, vibrant first-grade teacher known for her dedication to her students and her magnetic personality. Their connection was instant. To everyone around them, it seemed like fate had intervened. Jennifer was everything George admired: kind, intelligent, and full of life. Over the next 3 years, their relationship blossomed. Friends called them the perfect couple. He was the charming businessman, and she was the caring teacher who lit up every room she walked into. In June 2005, their fairy tale culminated in a breathtaking wedding at Castle Hill Inn, a luxurious coastal resort overlooking the endless Atlantic Ocean. It was the kind of ceremony most people only saw in movies: sunset vows, ocean breezes, and promises of forever. But sometimes when a story feels too perfect, tragedy lurks just beyond the horizon. On June 29, 2005, George and Jennifer boarded the MS Brilliance of the Seas in Barcelona. It was supposed to be the beginning of their dream honeymoon, a luxurious 2-week cruise through the glittering Aegean Sea, with stops in Greece, Turkey, and Italy. For the first few days, everything seemed perfect. The sunlit decks, the endless blue of the Chiostimiasi Mediterranean, and the romantic dinners under starry skies, it was the kind of honeymoon people wrote songs about. But behind the glamour, something darker was quietly brewing. On the night of July 4th, everything changed. George and Jennifer spent the evening drinking and gambling at the ship's casino. With them was a new acquaintance, 20-year-old Josh Askin, an American passenger they had befriended early in the trip. The night turned wild quickly. George and Josh drank heavily, moving between the casino and the ship's disco. Along the way, they met 3 other young men, Greg and Zach Rosenberg, cousins from New York, and their friend Rusty. Together, they formed a reckless group drinking absinthe, a notoriously strong and hallucinogenic spirit banned in many countries, but still sold legally in parts of Europe. By 2:30 a.m., security cameras captured the last footage of George. He was clearly intoxicated, but smiling, unaware it would be the last time anyone would ever see him alive. Jennifer had already left the disco, stumbling drunkenly through the corridors. Around 3:30 a.m., she was seen clinging to Lloyd, the casino manager, before collapsing in a hallway. Too drunk to find her way back to the cabin, she was eventually wheeled back by ship security just before 5 a.m. But by that time, George was already gone. At 8 a.m., a horrifying discovery was made. A crew member noticed blood smeared across the white canopy covering the lifeboats directly below cabin 9062, the room George and Jennifer shared. Inside the cabin, the scene was chaotic. Furniture was overturned, blood marked the sheets, and a chair was found oddly positioned right against the balcony railing. On the glass railing, investigators would later find a hip-sized smudge, as if someone had been sitting or pushed dangerously close to the edge. Passengers nearby reported hearing loud arguments, the sounds of a struggle, and then a heavy, sickening thud. And in the middle of all this chaos, Jennifer. She was found calmly receiving a scheduled massage at the spa, seemingly unaware that her husband had vanished without a trace. By the time the ship docked in Turkey, word of George's disappearance had spread like wildfire. Fear hung in the air. Passengers gathered in hushed circles speculating about what had really happened on the 7th deck that night. Some were terrified, others were just desperate for answers. At noon, Turkish police officially boarded the vessel. Their first stop, cabin 9062, the last known location of George Smith IV. The scene confirmed their worst fears: signs of a violent struggle, blood smears in multiple places, and that chair ominously positioned at the balcony railing. Jennifer was quickly located, and her behavior stunned investigators. Instead of frantically searching for her husband that morning, she had gone straight to a pre-scheduled massage. When questioned, she claimed she didn't remember much from the night before. She hadn't seen George since they parted ways at the casino. To detectives, something about her calm demeanor didn't sit right. The police immediately began reviewing security footage and keycard data. What they uncovered painted a disturbing timeline. Jennifer left the disco before George, staggering drunk and clinging to Lloyd, the casino manager. Meanwhile, George remained behind with the 3 young men, Greg and Zach Rosenberg, and their friend Rusty. At 4:05 a.m., the ship's keycard system recorded all 3 men entering George's cabin. What happened after that is one of the most chilling mysteries in true crime history. Minutes later, a couple staying in the cabin next door heard shouting, heavy footsteps, and then a loud, sickening thud. When they cracked their door open, they saw 3 men standing in the hallway, but there was no sign of George. By the time Jennifer was wheeled back to the cabin around 5 a.m., the cabin was silent. And George Smith IV was gone. With no body and no clear evidence, investigators were left with nothing but chilling theories. The first and most obvious was robbery gone wrong. George and Jennifer hadn't exactly been discreet about their wealth. Witnesses said the couple openly flaunted their luxury lifestyle aboard the ship. George wore an expensive watch, a wedding gift from Jennifer, and Jennifer herself sported a massive engagement ring that sparkled under every light. Some passengers even claimed they overheard the couple bragging about carrying tens of thousands of dollars in cash. On a ship full of strangers, that kind of talk was dangerous. The theory was simple. The 3 young men, Greg, Zach, and Rusty, set their sights on an easy target: get George drunk, separate him from his wife, and when he was too intoxicated to defend himself, take everything they could. But something went terribly wrong. The missing watch, the bloodstains shaped like sharp streaks on the sheets just the right size to match a watch clasp, the overturned furniture, and that sickening thud heard by the neighbors. Then came the second theory, one that was harder to believe but impossible to rule out. An accident. That night, The group had been drinking absinthe, a liquor notorious for its high alcohol content and hallucinogenic effects. Some suggested that George, lost in a drunken haze, might have sat or leaned too far over the balcony railing and simply fallen. But experts quickly cast doubt on this theory. The balcony railing stood nearly 4 feet high. George was 6 feet tall. For him to fall by accident, he would have had to climb or deliberately sit on the edge. Something wildly dangerous, even for a man that drunk. The hip-sized imprint on the glass and the chair pushed against the railing painted a far more sinister picture. Someone had helped him up there, or forced him. Adding to the mystery, Jennifer claimed she couldn't remember anything after 2:30 a.m. She had no memory of being wheeled back to the cabin, no recollection of the argument or the struggle neighbors heard. And just like that, the trail went cold. As days turned into weeks, the investigation hit wall after wall. With no body, no confession, and no undeniable evidence, the case became a nightmare of international bureaucracy. The Turkish authorities eventually passed the case to the FBI, but even America's top investigators couldn't crack it. Desperate for answers, the Smith family hired world-renowned forensic expert Dr. Henry Lee. If anyone could piece this puzzle together, it was him. Dr. Lee examined the crime scene meticulously. His conclusion was disturbing. George's death was highly unlikely to have been accidental. The railing was simply too high, and the hip-sized imprint on the glass suggested someone had either perched dangerously or been forced into that position. To determine the truth, Dr. Lee requested a full-scale reconstruction of the incident using a crash test dummy. But Royal Caribbean refused. They denied access to the crime scene and blocked any further tests. Meanwhile, the FBI began their own round of interrogations. Greg, Zach, and Rusty, along with Josh Askin, were all brought in for questioning. Josh failed his polygraph. Greg, the younger of the Rosenberg cousins, let slip a chilling statement. Whatever happened to George that night, it wasn't an accident. But before Greg could reveal anything more, tragedy struck again. In December 2019, Greg Rosenberg was found shot to death in his car, parked right outside his home, multiple gunshot wounds at close range. His murder remains unsolved to this day. With Greg's death, the last real chance of learning the truth died with him. And in 2015, after years of frustrating dead ends, the FBI officially closed the case. George Smith IV's death officially ruled an accident. The official ruling may have labeled it an accident, but to the Smith family, it was nothing short of a cover-up. They had spent nearly a decade chasing the truth, pouring their life savings into private investigations, working with top forensic experts, and offering a $100,000 reward for any information. But all they found were closed doors and unanswered questions. Meanwhile, Jennifer Hoggle, George's young widow, quietly settled with Royal Caribbean for a reported $1 million. Just 4 years after George's disappearance, she remarried and started a new life. By 2009, she had 2 children and seemed to have moved on entirely. For George's parents, every new headline about Jennifer felt like a knife twisting deeper into an open wound. How could she move on so quickly? Why did she never publicly demand justice for her husband? But the most haunting question of all, the one that tormented them day and night, was this: did she know more than she ever admitted? As the years passed, their hopes faded. George's body was never found. Somewhere beneath the cold, endless waters of the Aegean Sea, he remained lost to his family forever. And with every anniversary, every birthday, the pain grew heavier. In the end, George Smith IV became more than just a missing person. He became a symbol of how easily justice can be denied, and how some stories, no matter how tragic, are never meant to have an ending. In the years that followed, the Smith family refused to let their son's memory fade into the cold waters of the Aegean Sea. They held public vigils, spoke to every media outlet that would listen, and pushed relentlessly for the case to be reopened. But their cries for justice were met with silence. Official agencies had moved on. To them, this case was closed. But for a mother and father still waiting for their son to come home, it was far from over. Even now, nearly 2 decades later, the pain remains as raw as ever. His empty bedroom, his unopened birthday cards, the untouched chair at family dinners. For the Smiths, these weren't just objects, they were constant reminders of a life stolen, a promise unfulfilled. And while Jennifer moved on, the 3 men last seen with George faded quietly into obscurity. One dead. The others free their secrets buried as deeply as George's body. So the question still lingers in the air like a ghost that refuses to leave. Was this a tragic accident, or the perfect crime that slipped through the cracks of international law and jurisdiction? If one thing remains certain, it's this evil doesn't always announce itself with a gun or a knife. Sometimes it comes with a drink in hand, a charming smile, and an invitation to enjoy one more night in paradise. And by the time you realize the danger, it's already too late.